We can't help but enjoy a controversial movie, hearing rumors of a horror movie so shocking a country won't even release it, or a movie so shocking you will be arrested for distributing it. That piques most people's interest. We want to know more. But which are the worst of the worst? Well, today on Top 5 Scary Videos, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 5 scary horror movies that are illegal, part 2. Before we begin though, be sure to stick around until the end of the video where I'll be responding to some of your comments. With that, let's jump in. Also, apologies if my nose starts bleeding. That is something that's happening.
Here's the first motion picture to offer, to the daring, a look into the final, maddening space between life and death.
Coming in at 5, I Spit on Your Grave. Released in 1979 and directed by Miyazaki, I Spit on Your Grave is a rape and revenge horror film that tells the story of Jennifer Hills, a writer based in New York City who exacts revenge on each of her tormentors after 4 men gang rape her and leave her for dead. The movie is a violent slice of horror that was unsurprisingly met with fierce opposition upon its release. Critics such as Roger Ebert refer to it as, I quote, a vile bag of garbage without a shred of artistic distinction, and attending it was one of the most depressing experiences of my life. He also went on to call it so sick, reprehensible and contemptible, and he could barely believe it existed. However, it wasn't just movie critics who hated the movie, entire countries did as well. Canada initially banned the film, however they later allowed individual provinces to decide if it would be allowed within their borders during the 1990s. The UK would only allow the movie to be released in censored form, meaning severe cuts, whereas countries such as Norway, Iceland and West Germany at the time banned it outright on the premise that it supported violence against women. However, stranger still, the movie was only banned in Australia 20 years after its release. The ban was rescinded in 2004, however, but not all countries were as lenient, with the film still remaining banned in Ireland to this day. Coming in at 4, Snuff. Released in 1976 and directed by Michael Finley, Snuff is a splatter film that is most notorious for being marketed as if it were an actual snuff film. The plot itself revolves around actress Terry London and her producer Max Marsh, who visit an unnamed country in South America. A female biker cult led by a man named Satan stalks and eventually murders the pregnant London and her circle of friends. The movie is very Manson family-esque before quickly switching gears and becoming a documentary of a young woman being killed by the film's crew. Now, this movie actually has an interesting backstory. Michael Finley went down to Argentina to shoot a quick and dirty movie that would ultimately cash in on the helter-skelter craze, titling it Slaughter. However, the movie was unreleasable, but the then distributor Alan Shackleton had the idea of filming a fake killing, tacking it on the end of the movie and creating rumors that this was the real deal, a real snuff film. So to double down on the urban legend, they renamed the movie Snuff, and then hired fake protesters to picket in front of theatres. It eventually got to the point that the New York's district attorney considered prosecuting a theatre owner who was showing it. However, Variety were the first to expose the movie and its publicity stunts as hoaxes.
This is the true story of 4 innocent young actresses who thought they were making just another movie, but didn't know they were making the ultimate movie.
Coming in at number 3, Traces of Death. Released in 1993 and directed by Damon Fox, Traces of Death is a Z-Movie Mondo shockumentary that consists of various scenes of stock footage depicting death and real scenes of violence. Unlike the movie Faces of Death, which included fake deaths and reenactments, Traces is for the most part real and consists of public domain footage depicting death and injury. As you would expect, the movie was met with rejection all across the globe, and in 2005 the BBFC refused to give the first film an age certificate, effectively banning it. They deemed the movie to have no journalistic, educational or other justifying content for the images shown, while also suggesting that the film could potentially breach the UK laws under the Obscene Publications Act. The entire series has been subject to confiscation by customs authorities in Australia, and according to the country's regulations, I quote, they offend against the standards of morality, decency and propriety generally accepted by reasonable adults to the extent that they should not be imported. Honestly, this film is absolutely disgusting and should never be watched. Coming in at 2, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Released in 1986 and directed by John McNaughton, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer is a psychological horror about the random crime spree of a serial killer who seemingly operates with impunity. The film was, as expected, quite controversial. In the UK, the film has had a long and complex relationship with our friends the BBFC, with them refusing certification for many years. Now, the film's production company didn't even want to give the movie a theatrical release, which is a surprise, leaving the director to personally send out screener copies to critics in hopes of drumming up buzz. However, no one was willing, simply because the MPAA gave the movie an X rating, which at the time was mostly reserved for porno films. The film has heavy violence, which actually aided in the creation of the NC-17 rating, a distinction for movies with extreme content that don't quite cross the line into porn. But you may be asking, what happened to the film in Australia and New Zealand? Well, the film was originally outright banned by the film censor in 1992. A censored version was subsequently released on home video with cuts to the family massacre sequence, and was released on DVD in 2005.
Look at the world. It's either you or them. You know what I mean.
And finally coming in at number 1, The Last House on the Left. Released in 1972 and directed by the legendary Wes Craven, The Last House on the Left is an exploitation horror film that revolves around 2 teenage girls who were taken into the woods and tortured by a gang of murderous thugs. Now, this movie was actually Craven's directorial debut and was loosely inspired by Ingmar Bergman's The Virgin Spring, and in turn received vicious censoring, resulting in it being banned in certain countries for decades. The film was explicit, particularly the torture scene, and therefore the United Kingdom refused a certificate for cinema release by the BBFC in 1974 due to the scenes of sadism and violence. The film was ultimately banned throughout the remainder of the 1980s and into the 1990s. However, after a series of major cuts, the movie is now available for viewing. That itself didn't happen until 2008. To top it off, no one even bothered to attempt to distribute it in Australia due to the monumental problems it would have caused. It actually wasn't even released down under until 2004. How crazy is that? The New York Times critics, Howard Thompson, even admitted to walking out after just 50 minutes of this sickening tripe. Fun fact for you all, when it was no longer banned, my parents bought it for me. Merry Christmas. Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with our list? Were there any illegal horror movies that we missed? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, and perhaps we can do a part 3. Before I go though, I just want to respond to a few comments from one of our last videos. Top 5 scariest cosmic horror movies part 3. John Shadwick said, just as she promised, Lucy has gotten rid of Jack. I mean, I did promise it, but now that he's gone, I have regrets. Tutti Frutti said, if we join the cult, is wearing the hat mandatory? No, only I wear the hat. Don't even try that. Don't make that move. Tiffany Benefield said, Lucy, the hat is slowly gathering a following, but wear the hat. I know, at this rate, the hat's gonna have more Instagram followers than I am. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary vid. And until next time, see you later. Decency and propriety generally accept. The entire series of the straight to video traces. What?